أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم ادفع الظالمين بالظالمين واجعلنا منهم سالمين. So many people ask me why I felt the need to accuse Daniel Haqiqatjou of being ideologically affiliated with the terrorist and the Khawarij group ISIS and Al-Qaeda. They thought I was slandering him, but slander is Daniel's favorite hobby. I am very well aware of the consequences of slander in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ saw during his ascension, al-Mi'raj, men whose faces were being slit with iron hooks because they would lie and that lie would spread all around the world like fire. That is precisely what Daniel has built his influencer career with. He slanders our scholars Imam Zaid, Mufti Menk, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, Dr. Akram Nadwi, etc. He lies about the Sahaba when he said Umar radiallahu anh banned women from the masjid. He lies about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he says marital rape and domestic abuse is justified within Islam. I, on the other hand, have indisputable justification for whatever I said. I mean, it's not slander if you can prove it, right? So I'm going to show you how Daniel, in his own words, considers the ideology of murderers and rapists like ISIS to be correct. While billions of Muslims throughout the world consider ISIS and affiliate groups to be outside the fold of Islam, I, being one of these billions of Muslims, Daniel, on the other hand, is of the few, the very few who actually are so blinded by their extremism, ignorance, and hate that they consider ISIS to have a correct understanding of Islam. Many well-meaning Muslims ask me not to repeatedly affiliate him with these psychopaths, as in the ISIS, because it could get him into trouble. But the truth is that he has said these words himself. If there is anyone who would get him into trouble, it would be his own words and actions. He must not blame me or anyone else. This is his own article. Moreover, we as Muslims need to think about the safety of the Ummah. We cannot let any harm and blame come upon the Ummah just because of these few individuals who have a perverted understanding of Islam. I am a proud Muslim, and terrorist groups have nothing whatsoever to do with Islam.
Before we go into that, I want to give you an overview because unfortunately, there are many young Muslim boys who think that ISIS are doing a great job, God forbid, and that's because they have been misled and they have been radicalized by certain people. So we all need to know that ISIS are terrorists. ISIS, Al-Qaeda, these people, these are terrorists. They are disgusting people. They are not even Muslims, even though they have Muslim names, because they do the opposite of what Islam commands us to do. They are tyrants. They're disgusting terrorist criminals. And what's more important is that they are mercenaries. They are soldiers for dollars. They are usually funded by rich countries like the US, and they are created. Now you would ask the question, why would the US create something that it says that it fights? Good question. The US funds extremist groups, and this has been part of geopolitics even before US became a superpower. Even the British Empire built things like these, groups like these, extremist groups. And why they do this is then these groups then are positioned in very strategic places where the US wants to invade. So let me give you an example. If a thief wants to enter a house, the thief will create some sort of chaos wherein the people inside the house will feel endangered, and they would open their doors and they would let in any person willing to help. But actually that was the thief that created this synthetic, this artificial boogeyman just to enter the house. That's how the US created ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and positioned them in oil-rich and resource-rich Muslim countries, giving the US and allies an alibi, a reason to enter into Muslim nations to steal their resources and kill innocent people. So ISIS is funded by the US. ISIS is funded by US aid. We can see that there are various pictures like these. And they had no, when ISIS emerged, they had no qualms whatsoever accepting that they were funded by the US because they had really sophisticated weapons. Where do you get those from? And especially recently, we had the big expose from Hillary Clinton. Her email was leaked by WikiLeaks, where she's speaking to her Foreign Secretary, Jack Sullivan, where she says, there you can see in the mail, she says, AQ, which is Al-Qaeda, is on our side in Syria. And there it is. It made some big news. And well, we knew it before this leak. And there's another thing to the story. Israel also is pretty much involved, benefits from ISIS and treats ISIS soldiers before when the Syrian war started and much after that as well, because then it gives Israel, the state of Israel, reasons to kill innocent Muslims just by labeling them affiliates. So the one community that ISIS and Al-Qaeda actually harms the most is the Muslims. The Muslims are the worst victims of ISIS because ISIS is funded by these foreign agencies. And UN report reveals how Israel is coordinating with ISIS, militants inside Syria, and they acknowledge this it was too, out there for them to deny. But what's interesting to note is that when the threat of ISIS emerged with Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, with his shining Rolex watch, giving his khutbah in Iraq, there was an uproar all across the Muslim world. The Muslim world was unanimously against ISIS, unanimously against this threat, saying that ISIS has nothing whatsoever to do with Islam. I mean, there has never been so much unity in the Ummah as we saw in the past decade, how the Ummah united all of the factions together against extremism, and they said we have nothing to do with these terrorists, and Islam, especially Islam, has nothing to do with these ideologies, with these terrorists. We have nothing to do with them. This was a unanimous call, and that's why we see in this Pew Research as well, all major Muslim countries with Muslim populations, that's the Palestinian Muslim population, Indonesia, Turkey, Nigeria, and Malaysia, Senegal, Pakistan, Lebanon, all of them, they condemn, they are overwhelmingly, they have negative views regarding ISIS. And we know how many, I think thousands, millions, I would say, of Muslims throughout the world condemned ISIS killings in the last decade. Throughout the Muslim world, there was such outrage. And what was the call? The call was just this, that ISIS has nothing to do with Islam. ISIS does not understand Islam. ISIS does not represent Islam, and ISIS does not interpret Islam correctly. And look at Daniel Haqiqatjou. This is what his true face is. This is, my brothers and sisters, this is what I wanted to say. These are his words, not mine. He says this. He goes against the entire Muslim Ummah. And the entire Muslim Ummah, like I said, unanimously holds that ISIS is a misrepresentation of Islam. On the other hand, Daniel Haqiqatjou has the audacity, and look at the ignorance of the man, that he actually says, this is dated June 9th, 2017, Muslim skeptic, the true cause of radicalization in the Muslim world is not some misinterpretation of texts. Can you read that? Can you believe that? I was outraged. So he actually feels that whatever ISIS is doing is not some misinterpretation of texts. It is tyrants empowered by the US brutalizing their people, especially those committed to Islam. So Daniel, are you trying to say that these are just reactionary folk? That they just see their people dying, the religious people dying, and then they go crazy, but they have actually interpreted their texts well? Because to say that this is not some misinterpretation of texts is a very, very disgusting, it's a very dangerous statement there. You're actually saying that they have interpreted the text well. And don't you say that this is, this is anything other than that. Either you interpret the text well or you don't. There's nothing in between. He says that they haven't misinterpreted them. That means that they have interpreted the text well. So do you mean that when they're killing innocent girls, innocent Muslim girls going to school, this is a correct interpretation of Islam? When they kill and behead people just because they don't agree with them, just because they don't subscribe to their ideas, this is Islam. You call this a correct interpretation of Islam? Millions, I would say billions of Muslims. We are 2 billion strong ummah. Throughout the Muslim world condemn these actions, and you have the audacity to say that this is a correct interpretation of the texts. When they kill innocent Muslim girls going to schools, when they bomb these schools, they kill these children, are they interpreting the text correctly? When they are beheading infants, they're raping women, and they record all these atrocities and film them. Is this Islam? Is this a correct interpretation of Islam? Or when they bomb masajids, killing worshippers just because they don't agree with their ideology, just because they don't belong to their school of thought. Is this Islam? Killing Muslims who say the kalima while praying. Is this a correct interpretation of Islam? When they kill innocent people praying, their only crime is that they went to Jumu'ah, according to ISIS. Is this Islam? When they rape these Yazidi women, is this Islam? Is this a correct interpretation of Islam? Daniel has to answer these questions. Don't accuse me of slander. It is you, Daniel, who's written this article. I haven't written this.
What I found is an older article written in 2015, co-authored with Dr. Yasir Qadi, where Daniel argues that Islam has nothing to do with ISIS. The question that we all need to ask Daniel then is, what happened between 2015 and 2017 that made him refute his earlier position and then accept that ISIS has a correct interpretation of Islam? We know that he turned his back on Dr. Yasir Qadi and many others and slandered them, and then changed his position also now regarding ISIS. It could be either that Daniel has maybe undergone some sort of a serious existential crisis or psychological trauma, or just plain radicalization that has made him change his opinion on ISIS and have this extremist understanding where billions of Muslims don't agree with him. It's our job and obligation as Muslims, if we truly believe in Allah and His Messenger ﷺ, that we call out this extremist faction and we try to eradicate it ourselves.
is an insult to Islam. This is literally, you are defaming Islam. You are blaspheming against the Prophet ﷺ when you say that they haven't misinterpreted the text. I don't think there is any difference between you or Donald Trump, let's say, who says there's terrorism, which is Islamic terrorism. I don't think there is any difference between you and Macron, the French president, who says that we need to eradicate what he terms Islamic terrorism. You're using the same thing. They say that it's Islamic terrorism, and you are, well, in agreement with them that this is not a misinterpretation of texts. This is a very heavy statement. It's not just few words. It's a heavy statement, and you're being read by maybe thousands of people who actually think that, no, what ISIL and ISIS and Al-Qaeda are doing, this is Islam, but maybe they're doing it in a very violent and a very, maybe crude manner. Maybe we need to do the same things in a sort of a slightly better manner. And well, this also then explains why you have the views that you have for women, for women's education, for gender relations, because here is an ISIS manifesto that spells out the role for women. Now, look at the commonalities. That's what ISIS says, that marriage and motherhood, not college degrees and careers, are the paramount goals for young girls living in the territory controlled by Islamic State of Syria and Iraq. And that is what your views were in our debate, where you said, you openly, unambiguously said that women must not be educated, right? And well, they go to the extent of killing young girls going to school. This is the ideology behind it. You see, for every action, there is an ideology, and that's their ideology, that girls don't need to be educated, they need to be married, and they need to be mothers, and hence we can bomb them. And you've said that they've interpreted the texts correctly. That's what you're saying. It's not a misinterpretation of texts. Now, I want to share with you something which also adds up to this story and which also solidifies these justifications, which is that Daniel Haqiqatjou openly endorses this individual he calls him Sheikh Haytham Saifuddin. And he is the one who did the review for his Yaqeen Institute's criticisms. And well, I wanted to look at who this person is, and this is what I found, that this Haytham Saifuddin is associated with Ahmed Musa Jibril. And for those of you who don't know who this person is related to the Jabhat al-Nusra and the Islamic State, ISIS, and he has been an inspiration for them. He has also been convicted of 42 charges, including fraud, and not a very good record to have. And he has open links with these terrorists in Syria. He openly calls for their actions and whatever they're doing in Iraq and Syria. And this Haytham Saifuddin, who is Daniel's sheikh, also endorses somebody known as Sulaiman ibn Nasir al-Alwan. And here we can see one of his fatwa, which is about takfir. You have to know that takfir, or calling somebody a kafir, is a very serious crime. One of the major differences that mainstream Muslims have with this extremist fringe, is that mainstream Muslims desist from doing takfir, calling people kafir, and only our scholars should do that. We just rely on, and only it's a particular group of scholars who can do takfir. And those are mujtahids or marji' scholars. Everybody should not do this, because the Prophet ﷺ warned us that if you do takfir on anyone, you say somebody is a kafir, that returns to you and you become a kafir. So it's a very heavy, very, very heavy responsibility. We don't do that. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah never does it. Okay, so it's taken as a very heavy responsibility. Whereas on the other hand, the Khawarij, people like the ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all of their religious scholars who are behind this ideology, they have the opposite view, as you can see in this fatwa, that they say if we don't do takfir, we will be kafir. It's the opposite. We say we are not going to be doing takfir because we don't want to be kafir. They say the opposite thing, that we have to, it's obligatory to do takfir, otherwise we will be kafir. So this is completely un-Islamic, and this has nothing to do with the Sunnah, and this is where their extremism comes from. The fact that it's very easy for them to bomb masajid and to kill Muslims and to rape Muslim women and to kill Muslim children is because they do this thing of takfir. And then what they claim is that, okay, since this is a kafir, for them, then this is wajib al-qatl or whatever they do. And those are very deviant, very dangerous, very un-Islamic practices. And may Allah save us all and everyone from these dangerous extremist ideas.
And then when we want to look at who this individual Sulaiman al-Alwan is, we find that he was the mentor of Abdul Aziz al-Umari, one of the plane hijackers in the 9/11 attack. He has been convicted, then granted bail. He was an integral part of Al-Qaeda and was known as their main sheikh. These are the people who the Prophet ﷺ has called the Khawarij, and according to a hadith, they are the dogs of hell, because they spread much fitna in the name of Islam. So one last thing I'd like to say, that Daniel Haqiqatjou's views regarding marriage, when he tries to justify marital rape within Islam, when he tries to justify domestic abuse within Islam, when he tries to justify his views on how Muslim women mustn't be given equal access to education, Muslim women do not belong to the public sphere, and how Islam was spread by the sword, these opinions do not belong to mainstream Islam. The only people who say this are either the ISIS type of extremists, and on the other spectrum, interestingly, it's the atheists and ex-Muslims, Islamophobes, who hate Islam. They're saying the same. So if you notice, both these two factions, that is the extremists and the Islamophobes, those who hate Islam, actually say the same thing. So the Islamophobes say Islam was spread by the sword. Muslim women cannot get educated. They are locked up. Islam justifies domestic abuse, marital rape, and slavery. And the extremists say, yes. They actually agree with each other. The only difference is in the tone. The ex-Muslims lie against Islam, and this is done in an accusative tone, whereas the extremists lie against Islam also, and they say the same thing in an affirmative tone. But mainstream Muslims deny all these lies and propaganda, and they castigate this extreme fringe as being the Khawarij and being outside the fold of Islam. Thus, we as Muslims have an obligation to call these extremists out, who are defaming our beautiful religion and defaming our Prophet ﷺ. I request you all to ponder on what I've just said. Do not support this extremist and his organization, because he belongs to the extremist fringe he considers, and that is why, because he is on the extremist fringe, he considers mainstream Muslim scholars deviant. So you will have to undo his indoctrination. Those people who he has slandered, like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, Imam Zaid, Mufti Meng, Dr. Akram Nadwi, Dr. Yasir Qadi, these are mainstream Sunni Muslim scholars. We need to respect them and learn from them. I want to request those who subscribe to his institute especially that they must not let extremists and charlatans like Haqiqatjou educate their young children. Your children are your amana. Look in whose hands are you placing them. Lastly, this is a call to the American Muslim community. This, brothers and sisters, is a catastrophe in the making right under your nose. If Daniel Haqiqatjou is not stopped in his tracks, and if the Muslim community does not call him out for his extremism, tomorrow the entire community will be blamed for his views. So I ask Allah to guide him to the right path of mainstream Islam and save us all from his fitna and his very, very, very deviant views. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum.